Hi, I'm Charlie, and this is Stereo Hysteria. Our November artists of the month, the Feelies, are a legendary band from Halden, New Jersey, whose distinctive style of percussive, guitar-based rock music has earned them a devoted following. They were formed in the late 1970s by guitarists Glenn Mercer and Bill Millian, and by 1980 they had signed to Stiff Records and released a seminal debut album, Crazy Rhythms. Despite that album's critical acclaim, it didn't initially sell in huge numbers, and the band went on hiatus, with its members moonlighting in other local bands like the Willies, the Tripes, and Young Woo. The hiatus ended with the release of their sophomore album, 1986's The Good Earth, which introduced the classic Feelies lineup, with Stan Demeski on drums, Brenda Sauter on bass, and Dave Weckerman on percussion. In 1991, the band disbanded, only to reunite in 2008 after an invitation to open up for Sonic Youth. And since then, they've stayed together, releasing 2 superb new albums of originals. Last month saw the release of Some Kind of Love, a live record documenting a 2018 cover set of one of the Feelies' chief influences, the Velvet Underground. Stereo Hysteria spoke with founding member Bill Millian via telephone, and we'll be hearing our conversation over the next hour. But we'll begin by hearing the Feelies' debut single, released in 1979 on Rough Trade Records, called Fa C'est La.
Mom and Dad, and tell them everything is alright. Fa 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 c'est la. Fa 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 c'est la.
I usually like to start off these conversations just asking a little bit about your musical background, just how you first started listening to and playing music. Like, did you have a particularly musical family, like either your parents or like the cool, influential older siblings?
So a little bit of both. My older brothers were big fans of music, and, you know, they would go see, like, as an example, the Rascals, when they were actually called the Young Rascals, played at a local, venue, wasn't very big, in Garfield, New Jersey, called the Phone Booth.
Okay.
And they would come back and tell me about the Rascals, or seeing Little Richard up at this lake venue they'd get back and I'd ask them how Little Richard was, and they'd say he was great, but the guitar player was really something that he had. The guy would play with his teeth and play behind his back, and it turned out that was Jimi Hendrix.
Oh.
His stint with Little Richard didn't last too long because he was kind of showing him up a bit. So, yeah, so my older brothers, but for me, it was probably when Beatles hit.
Okay.
I was in the third grade, maybe. That was kind of the start of it. I think what preceded the Beatles musically, there wasn't really too much going on.
And did you just kind of go out and get a guitar and start a garage band just after the Ed Sullivan Show?
No, and again, I was pretty young, so it was before that thought had crossed my mind. I would just stack books up that sounded really good and play along with Ringo.
Okay.
Dashboards of cars back then had really great sound if you wanted to kind of play percussion on them. So anything that was going on at that time, when my mother took me out for a drive or whatever, I would just kind of play along. But no, the guitar didn't come until later, really, in high school.
And yeah, what were the artists that were sort of exciting you in a musical sense and making you want to learn how to play?
One of the things that kind of inspired me to pick up the guitar was probably both like Sterling Morrison and Ron Asheton.
Okay.
I was a big fan of the Stooges. I'd go see the Stooges really whenever they played, if it was well within driving distance or whatever. He just had this sound, as did Sterling, that just sounded to me, to my ears, that it was something that was obtainable, something that I could do without feeling overwhelmed by the sound of like other bands. It just didn't seem that obtainable. It sounded simple.
And yeah, I think that simplicity is something that certainly runs through a lot of the Feelies records. It kind of strikes me that the Feelies were never shy about doing cover versions of these formative influences. You've definitely done Beatles and Stooges and Velvets and Stones on stage and on record. How do you choose a cover version?
Usually well, without stating the obvious, it's usually something that fits the band dynamic, something that Glenn is comfortable singing and playing as well. So, and, we're fans of a lot of this stuff. So, especially when we play live, it's comes at a point in the evening where we, primarily just played all of our music. Now we just really want to kind of relax and have fun with something. So, music, usually it generally reflects what inspired us.
And how did you and Glenn meet and start playing music together?
We lived in the same town, although there were two high schools in the town. Glenn went to a different high school than I went to, and it was separated by woods, like a wooded area. In the middle of the woods, there was like an old beeswax factory, which, if you're familiar with the back cover of the Good Earth album, that's the beeswax factory in the middle of this woods between these two high schools. But being from the same town, I was in a neighborhood, just kind of walking through this neighborhood, and I heard this sound coming out of a garage, and it was "I Want to Be Your Dog." And being a Stooges fan, and just being in the suburbs where literally no one knew who the Stooges were at that time. Which, you fast forward today and hear Iggy on car commercials. I mean, it's just like all over the place, right? And so I stopped in and introduced myself, and one thing kind of led to another, got into conversations, and eventually started playing together.
Here's an early Feelies demo recorded at the late great Carla Bley's studio of a song called "The Boy with the Perpetual Nervousness."
But not too well, 'cause he doesn't have a lot to say. Well, this boy lives right next door and he never has nothing to say. Doesn't seem like he does anything. He never helps out in the yard. Makes his mother carrying groceries, cause he doesn't like work that's hard. The boy next door is into better things, as far as I can see. The boy next door is into bigger things. The boy next door is me, alright.
Sort of famously, your co-producer for Crazy Rhythms, Mark Abel, called you the most obstinate people he's ever met. So you do have this, maybe a reputation of being very meticulous in the studio.
Well, I think less obstinance, I think more of how we perceived writing music. In effect, was the production is part of the writing process. How a song sounds is just part of it.
And from Crazy Rhythms, here's a bit of the final version of The Boy with the Perpetual Nervousness.
Well, he's not like the boys that we used to have, not like them at all. Oh no, the old ones made their parents proud. This one beats them all. The boy next door is into better things, as far as I can see. The boy next door is into bigger things. The boy next door is me, yeah.
So from the very beginning, the Feelies seem to have had this very distinctive, unique sound. What was the process of sort of honing in on that?
I think the way we look at it to this day is music it's kind of living, right? And so we're always kind of honing in on something. And there's a song from Crazy Rhythms that up until recently, we just made some changes at the very end of the song just to try to make it sound better. Switched like instrumentation where I went to an acoustic guitar and it sat much better against Glenn's guitar in the song. We worked on Stan and Dave's parts at the very end, which made it much more fluid sounding. So it is this sort of living thing that we're kind of always, listening for and taking a look at. But I think way back in the beginning, it just evolved out of necessity. Glenn and I were playing Stratocaster guitars at the time, and because of the sound, the cymbals would kind of cancel out a lot of what we were doing on the guitar. So that led to us kind of exploring replacing the dynamic of a cymbal with different types of percussion. And then eventually switched to a different guitar, which again sat better with Glenn's Fender. So I went to Gibson guitars and they just sounded a lot better, the two together.
And I think that the use of percussion in the band is so smart because, a lot of bands use shakers and tambourines and auxiliary percussion on the recordings in the studio, but not during the live performance. To me, it always feels like it's missing something really important, like a textural change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Dave has put in a lot of work, to be sure.
That first album, Crazy Rhythms, what strikes me is that it doesn't really sound like anything that was trendy in 1980. There's no big rock guitar distortion, there's no splashy crash cymbals. It's not punk, it's not post-punk, it's not new wave.
Yeah, it was really the complete opposite of all of what you just said, especially with the guitars. At the time, what we were hearing particularly in the clubs, was a lot of like overdriven guitar sound. So we wanted to avoid that. And when we went about recording Crazy Rhythms, we had trouble getting a guitar sound. So we ended up taking the guitars direct through the board with the intention of later in the recording process feeding them out through an amp and just to see how that sounded. But we ended up liking the really clean guitar sound that it created. And again, it kind of goes back to like if you listen to like Buddy Holly's music, you'll hear like really clean guitar sounds. So it was just something, I don't want to say that we stumbled upon it, but we ended up liking what we were hearing, so we ended up keeping it. But it was the complete opposite of what was going on at the time.
Here's another highlight from Crazy Rhythms, a Brian Eno-influenced song called Raised Eyebrows. After Crazy Rhythms was released, the band sort of went on an extended hiatus. Like, your rhythm section left, you were dropped by Stiff Records, and you started playing with a lot of these different groups, the Tripes, the Willies. What was sort of the decision behind abandoning the Feelies for that time and moving to sort of a less formal way of making music, maybe?
I think it was just a combination of a number of things. We weren't happy with our relationship with Stiff, and we just got into other types of music. We started listening more to artists like Brian Eno and Philip Glass, Steve Reich, and more ambient things. Gunn and I did soundtrack work for Susan Seidelman's first film, Smithereens, and so it was a lot of like incidental type music, and we started playing with a lot of friends locally, people that we grew up with, that we've known for years, that just happened to be musicians, and kind of just started exploring what that looked like, and eventually kind of came back around to the Feelies. The big part of it for us was we never fell into the pressure of there was just need for a second album or a third album or a fourth or fifth and so on down the line. It's just we kind of have set our own timetable when it comes to those things. And we didn't, we stayed busy during that time. It's just, we didn't have, like you said, our rhythm section left, but we got acquainted with new players, and eventually it brought us back full circle to the Feelies.
The classic lineup of the Feelies, which sort of debuted with the Good Earth album, that's still the lineup that you're playing with now. It seems like that's sort of like the perfect balance of folks to make this music.
Well, yeah, and a part of it is we're probably more on the same page. That doesn't mean that everyone in the band has the same exact aspirations, or especially when it comes to like playing shows. We all vary to some degree in that regard. But I think for the most part, we're comfortable with each other, where if someone in the band does not want to do something, then it's pretty much the way we go without much hesitation. There's no pressure that I think a lot of bands fall into. It's a trap that I think a lot of bands fall into. So that kind of went away. I think, particularly with our drummer for Crazy Rhythms, Anton, he wanted to go down a different road than ultimately we did. So that made the change. So that's kind of all the difference in the world. And that's why we still all play together.
And that album, The Good Earth, you worked with Peter Buck of REM producing it.
Yes.
What do you think he brought to the record?
2 more ears, 2 more valuable ears. And he would be the first to say this. He knew that, we knew how we wanted to go with that recording.
Yeah.
And a lot of times with any of our albums, really, we looked at that third sort of co-producer role as another set of ears. How do you think the bass line sounds? Is the tempo a little bit too fast? Should we redo this vocal part? That sort of thing. Not really anything pertaining to the arrangement of the song. I mean, that really is very rare where we adapted that approach to producing.
Yeah.
So it was really another set of ears, another opinion that, yeah, that's a good take, or it's not a good take, try it again, sort of thing.
From the second Feelies album, 1986's The Good Earth, here's a song called The High Road. And yeah, it definitely sounds like a Feelies album and not an REM album. Although it does seem like the vocals are a little lower in the mix than they would be in future albums.
Yeah, well, we've kind of experimented with different levels of vocals over the album, various albums. And I think at that time, and even during Crazy Rhythms, we started out thinking of the vocals in terms of just another instrument in the mix. So versus what a lot of music was doing and still does, where there's the music and then there's the vocals, and the vocals sit way up on top of the mix. So we wanted to kind of integrate it better with that. I think probably, I don't know, at least in my ears, maybe the only time we might have strayed away from that is during the album you previously mentioned, Only Life.
Okay. And that was the first album you did for A&M Records, right?
Yes.
What did it feel like being on a major label at that time in your career?
Well, they were kind of almost like a crossbred of labels. They were more like artist-centric.
Okay.
We had a lot of friends at the label, and even though they did have artists like Janet Jackson and Sting, they were still relatively small, and we had a real good relationship with them really until they got bought out by, I think, Universal, maybe?
Okay.
I don't know, but for a while they were more like an artist-centric label, and we had a good relationship at that point.
And did it sort of take the band to more places? Like, I think you did more touring in that time. Like, I think you did some dates opening for Lou Reed.
Yeah, we actually toured the country with Lou.
Okay.
It was kind of a long tour that did a week on Broadway with him at the St. James Theater and went across the entire country. And, he chose a lot of really great venues there, primarily like theaters.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't like arenas or anything like that. So, and it ended up at the Universal Amphitheater in LA. But yeah, we did a lot more playing back then. We went on some tours in Europe, and ultimately we found that wasn't a good fit for the band. We've never been big on touring.
I'm speaking to you from Chicago, and the local station XRT here definitely had you in pretty heavy rotation. I'm sure that's how my folks heard that album for the first time.
Chicago is actually one of the cities that we loved playing at. In fact, the last time we really strayed far from home was we did 2 shows. We played Pitchfork
yeah,
a couple years ago, and then prior to that, the Jay Pritchard Pavilion.
Okay, yeah, the Millennium Park.
Yeah. Before that, way back then, I think we played a couple shows at a number of places, the Metro, Cubby Bear. Although I don't know if the Cubby Bear is still there.
It is, actually, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, right by Wrigley Field there.
Right across the street. There was another, I think it was more of like a theater, but I forget the name of that place.
Was it the Vic Theater, maybe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there's a recording of that show floating around somewhere.
As broadcast by WXRT, here are the Feelies live at Chicago's Vic Theater in May 1991, with a quite spirited version of Away.
Over in the corner, causing a commotion, driving me away, driving me backwards. Baby's getting uptight. Listen to her holler, listen to her heartbeat, really getting louder. Burning with desire, taking me higher, taking me away, set me on fire, messing my mind up, blowing my mind out, blowing me away, taking me away, 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 yeah, away, away.
go again. Really going nowhere. Really going nowhere. Now we're in the indie. Yeah, we're in the indie. Blowing me away. Taking me away. 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 Yeah. Away.
One of your highest profile fans was the director Jonathan Demme, who invited you to be in the movie Something Wild and also directed the video for your song Away. How did you get introduced to him? And is it true that he wanted to make a full-length Feelies concert movie called Night of the Living Feelies?
Yeah, he did. The way we initially got involved with Jonathan was he had sent a letter to us. There was an address on the back of Crazy Rhythms for our production company, and he sent a letter. And back then, that's how a lot of people communicated. They sent letters. So we'd get, because of the address on the back of Crazy Rhythms, we'd get all of this fan mail. He sent this letter, and in the letter he explained that he was a filmmaker and he was a good filmmaker, and he saw the band at the Whiskey in LA and really was a big fan, and he would love to work with us, and we should reach out and contact him. But at the time, we got a lot of letters like that. Bands were sending us demos, and it was just like kind of an overwhelming thing. And so we kind of put it aside, and I think it was around the time that Melvin and Howard came out, and it was up for a few awards, for the Academy Awards show, and the name kind of clicked when they brought it up a few times, and tracked down the letter, and I reached out to Glenn and said, yeah, this guy just won a couple Oscars, like, so I guess he's legitimate. And we had contacted him. He invited us for a special screening of Melvin and Howard, making the point that it was very important to him that we get there right at the start of the movie. He didn't want us to miss the opening scene, which is Jason Robards like plowing through the desert on a motorcycle like real deranged, and ultimately crashing. That was the start of the movie. So, and it started a real long friendship with him. And the film that he wanted to make, it kind of preceded Stop Making Sense.
Okay.
He described it as kind of like almost like a zombie type movie. People, all these like zombies are out and about, and they hear a Feelies concert going. I don't know how this would have played out, truthfully, but I guess he must have had some sort of vision in his head. And they go to a Feelies concert and they, become alive.
Okay.
But he couldn't get the funding for it. And I think he approached the Talking Heads manager to see if he can help out with funding.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Gary Kurfürst. And he said, well, no, but enough for the Feelies. How about the Talking Heads? So just the rest is history.
Well, now I want to see the zombie Feelies concert film.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen now. Unless, of course, Jonathan comes back to life. Then,
right. That would be perfect.
Yep.
A zombie director.
Yeah, but he's always been a big supporter of the band.
Yeah.
Even, I guess, shortly before his death, he had a retrospective at the Jacob Burns Film Center in New York. And it's like a week of all of his films. It was called Something Wild, the films of Jonathan Demme. And he had asked us to be there for the showing of Something Wild. And what they did was they would show a film. I think like with the Talking Heads, like David Byrne would be there, and it'd be a Q&A from the audience. It was actually a pretty cool event, and the way it was presented to an audience. And so we did that, and there was like a Q&A with the audience. We performed after the film, And, it was pretty neat.
Up next, we'll hear the single mix of a song that appeared on the band's fourth album, 1991's Time for a Witness, called Invitation. Shortly after your second album on A&M, Time for a Witness, you left the band and relocated to Florida. Was that sort of a difficult decision?
It was really out of necessity. Again, going back to talking about the dynamic in the band, we've always said, if there comes a point where we're not enjoying what we're doing, having fun doing what we're doing, then we would stop doing it. And at the time, my older sister was dying of cancer, and she's having a bit of trouble in her marriage, so she put a lot of weight on me to kind of help out. And it just was something that took a heavy toll. And during performances, I'd get to the end of a set and be looking down and thinking, I start having like anxiety attacks, and looking down and seeing that there's like 2 or 3 songs left, and I only have that many songs, and then I'm done. And there were a few encores where, because of those anxiety attacks, I couldn't actually go back out, and just became something that wasn't workable for me at all. So that's the reason why I stopped playing.
Yeah, it does seem like that is kind of an essential part of the Feelies spirit. It's not necessarily an ambivalence towards the music business, but it's like an understanding that there are other life priorities that have to take precedence sometimes.
Well, sure. And I think that what was kind of most important, I think, for the band as a whole was it wasn't this defined situation where, the band is breaking up. We never had that conversation. For the most part, we ended up, pretty good terms when I stopped playing. And then Glenn and I stayed in touch because we'd get requests for the music. It was either, through film or commercial use or whatever. We'd stay in touch because of that. And then further down the road, one of my sons was going to school at Princeton, and I'd go up there to see him. And one thing kind of led to another. And, eventually we got back together. And primarily it was driven by a request from the band Sonic Youth, who asked us to play this Battery Park show in Lower Manhattan. And initially we were kind of hesitant to do it because we thought, if we don't kind of click for whatever reason and we're committed to doing it, it's kind of hard to back out of. But I think at a certain point, everyone in the band realized, well, if we don't make a commitment, then we're not going to be able to kind of move forward anyway. So in short, that's kind of the story, how we started playing again after a number of years not playing.
Here's the leadoff track from the reunited Feelies 2011 album, Here Before, called Nobody Knows.
Is it too late to do it again? Or should we wait another 10? Nobody knows. Everyone cares. Everyone's asking for answers to prayers. Well, you never know how it's gonna go. No one ever knows how it's gonna go. How many times I heard you say, every hour, every day. Nobody knows, nobody says anything really that hasn't been said. Well, you never know how it's gonna go. No one ever knows how it's gonna go.
When you put out the new albums, Here Before in 2011 and In Between in 2017, they both seem like classic Feelies records, like you picked up right where you left off.
Yeah, well, I think, people have kind of asked that question about the Velvet Underground album as well, was like, well, did you give a lot of thought to the arrangements? Did you do this deep dive into their catalog? And I think it's as simple as, these are our sensibilities when it comes to playing music. And so, yeah, I mean, we weren't going to make a radical change. We'd sit down and start putting music together. These, one thing leads to another, and it's who we are.
And yeah, you mentioned the new Velvet Underground record. Like, as with your earlier covers, it strikes me that all those versions are not staged recreations of the originals. It sounds more like you're inhabiting a song that you're very familiar with. It doesn't sound like a cover, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I think some of the songs we were familiar with because we did play, we do some of them during encores. There were a number of songs that we hadn't played before that we had to learn. But I think the only, in terms of how we wanted to sound, we didn't really give it a lot of thought. We didn't discuss it a lot other than, when it came to certain songs on the album, like Sunday Morning, we wanted Dave to play bells, or on Who Loves the Sun, like a triangle. So we heard some of that in the original recordings and we kind of adapted that to these songs. But for the most part, played as we would play them without a lot of discussion.
It's just a restless feeling.
sounds like you're using the ostrich tuning on All Tomorrow's Parties.
Yeah.
That's got to require either some extra tuning or a second guitar.
That was the second guitar.
Okay.
Because I don't know, taking guitar and putting it in ostrich tuning and then taking it out, I don't know how that would fare,
Probably wouldn't be great for the intonation.
No, not. I mean, you can eventually get it back into tune, but like the next song probably wouldn't stay in tune.
Yeah.
Probably have to keep like tweaking it as you went along. So yeah, it was the second guitar.
I mean, the whole album just made me want to pick up an electric guitar and plug in a fuzz pedal. It's just very immediate. It doesn't sound like an exhibit piece, which is kind of ironic because it was recorded at the opening of this Velvet Underground exhibit.
Well, that's really a great compliment as far as I'm concerned. I mean, if it makes you want to pick up a guitar, I know that feeling well.
I think the show happened in 2018. What was the process of bringing it from the live show to a finished recording that you were happy with to put out?
Kind of tedious, frustrating at times. When we did the show, we had made the decision to multi-track record it. So, I mean, it literally, there were just microphones all over the place. And we didn't do anything with it. We had rough mixes initially that we listened to. And we thought that, there's maybe something here we should consider putting out in some form, whether on as an EP or just kind of pick the songs that maybe sounded better than others. And so it kind of started out like that, but given our unique sense of time, that probably encompassed maybe a year or two. And then the pandemic hit, and we tried mixing it with the engineer, Scott Anthony, who was based in New Jersey. He would send files to Glenn and I, and we'd make suggestions. It's not like that we were able to mix it. We would basically say, maybe this guitar should be over here, add some reverb, or, make this change or that change. And the experience, that was the frustrating part, because it just wasn't working, and it went on for months and months. And finally, we just kind of threw our hands up and just said, no, we can't. This is not a way that we're comfortable working. It's just not working out very well. So once, things cleared up and traveling was, greatly improved, then I was able to go up to New Jersey and, we mixed it in the studio. So, and then we ultimately decided to include the whole concert, like flaws and all. So, and the other piece of this that actually, there was some indecision on our part, because since that concert, and not because of having anything to do with the concert itself, but there's been, Velvet Underground 24/7.
Yeah, the documentary came out, and
yeah, I mean, there were bands covering Velvet Underground songs. There were compilation, different artists covering Velvet Underground songs.
Yeah, there's a new Lou Reed biography that just came out.
I just got it in the mail.
Oh, great.
Today. Rather large book. I guess there's a show called Talk House.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm supposed to have a conversation with Will Hermes about it.
Very cool.
So that's how I ended up getting the book. So, yeah, so I'm looking forward to reading it. I just finished The Art of the Straight Line. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I can't say I am, no.
Well, I guess Lou wanted to write this book about his experiences with Tai Chi.
Okay.
And so he didn't really get around to it before he died. And then Laurie kind of threw notes and with some help from others put this together. So it's his experience with Tai Chi and all these different people, like different friends, musicians, artists, Tai Chi folks. They all write different things throughout the whole book. The Jonathan Richman part was particularly interesting, because goes on to say how, I guess when he was this young kid in high school, he was walking, through Harvard Square, and saw this man carrying a guitar, and he went up to him and he asked him if he was Lou Reed. He said, "Yes, I am." And he says, "I love your music. I really just, music is just like so great. It's so inspiring." And Lou asked him what he loved about it. And he said, the guitars, they sound like drums, just that whole downstroke. And then he goes on to say how they kind of welcomed him. He'd go to their sound checks. He was somewhat of a novice at the time on guitar, and Sterling would show him things on the guitar. Lou would show him like different settings on the amp, and the whole band like welcomed him and taught him quite a few things. So it's kind of an interesting part of the book, but the book is really interesting in total about that experience that he had with Tai Chi. There was just so much Velvet Underground stuff going on, and because it's the Velvet Underground, we thought, should we really even put this out? Seems kind of like overload, and you're kind of running the risk of people just, here's another bunch of folks like doing Velvet Underground songs. So eventually, we owed the engineer money, so we had to do it. The practicality of it all.
I get the sense that you're not about to announce a world tour or anything, but do you have any projects in the works? Like I saw that last year you did a couple shows with the Willies.
Yeah, so the Willies was something of particular interest to us. There were two people that played in the Tripes, John and Tony Bumgartner. Again, people that we've known for years and years, and they have a band called Speed the Plow. I think Glenn just started playing with them recently. We wanted to kind of start looking at playing as the Willies again. And the Willies, a lot of what the Willies were doing were like playing along with like tapes, playing originals. It was more instrumental for the most part, or if there were vocals, it was kind of vocals as instruments. And then we also fold in some covers, like, Eno covers, or did a couple songs from David Bowie's Low album.
Okay.
And Kraftwerk, things like that. So we've talked about a couple things, maybe, recording Willie's album, or maybe a combination Feelies, Willie's album.
Interesting.
Kind of almost like in the vein of like the Low album, where you have songs that kind of complement one another. One side would be like Feelies music and the other would be Willie's music. So kind of talked about a number of things. We'll see how it unfolds.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing what shape it takes. Just to wrap up, do you have any thoughts about the Feelies' legacy? Because it seems like your career in music is sort of unplanned, but looking at today's indie rock bands, there are lots of echoes of the Feelies. Like there's a very good indie band in Madrid called the Boys with the Perpetual Nervousness. The band Ducks Limited just did a really good cover of Invitation this year.
Yeah, I saw that. There's a band, I think, from either Australia or New Zealand, the Salad Boys. Some of their music sounded interesting. I'm not all that familiar with them, but some of what I heard I liked. But they got the Salad Boys from a line they misheard in Face La. Break the silence with the Salad Boys. Silent voice. But so, which is kind of funny. So, I don't know. This has kind of come up quite a bit in conversations. And I think people who write about music a lot of times take the easy way out. And you'll hear that with Velvet Underground comparisons. Like this band sounds like the Velvet Underground, or that band sounds like... I'd be hard-pressed to know any band that sounds like the Velvet Underground. Certainly the Feelies don't. I think you can kind of look at maybe a song here or there, which you can kind of maybe drop in that category. But for the most part, I don't hear the Velvet Underground doing a song like Raised Eyebrows, as an example.
Definitely not, yeah.
And it's the same with a lot of bands that came after us, like where they cite the Feelies. Real Estate is one that kind of comes to mind. And they're from a town over, and we became pretty good friends with them. We've done a number of shows with them. And, Martin's played with us on a few occasions. And but, to make that comparison, I don't hear it. I don't hear Real Estate sounding like the Feelies. I hear Real Estate sounding like Real Estate.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just think it's, for people who write about such things, I think it's taking the easy way out.
I can see elements of the sound, like a clean guitar or a vocal register, but what the Feelies does is sort of a unique version of those elements.
Well, I think anybody who plays music or writes music, you subconsciously pick those things up, or sometimes consciously pick those elements up, and you may incorporate them into, the sound. I know there's been a number of Feelies songs where, in my mind, they might have started out like, oh, this sounds a little bit like Neil Young, but to no one else in the band. There was a song, I think, that Glenn thought sounded more like Southern Stomp music, and Dave thought was real Velvet Underground. in origin. So it's people's perception. But for the most part, I don't think there's too many bands that sound like the Feelies or that I know of or sound like the Velvet Underground.
And that's just about all the time we have for our salute to the Feelies. I'd like to thank Bill Millian for taking the time to share his memories with Stereo Hysteria, Howard Wolfing for coordinating our conversation, and of course, you, the listener, for tuning in. Be sure to tune in again next time when we'll be hearing a set of songs about taking. But before we go, here's a bit of a Feelies encore from a March 2009 set at the 930 Club in Washington, D.C., a cover of Jonathan Richman's I Wanna Sleep in Your Arms. This is Charlie, signing off.
No, I never